everyone, I'm Caitlin,
And I'm Kylie.
and we're coming live to you straight from the Hive. Today, we're going to talk a little bit about some of the things that we learned about being small business owners. So, what are some of the tools that we use and things that we invested in as well? And then the back end and just lessons that we learned along the way. I think that this is a really important topic, one of the most important that we'll go over because we're only about 10 months into this and we've actually learned a ton. We've learned a ton. We have so much more to learn.
And I think a great place to start is our journey learning all of these things. So starting with tools, I would say we're still a little this way, but when we started Hustlin' Honeys and even Honey and Hive, we were very stingy business owners and we tried to start everything the cheapest way possible, doing it a little grittier and dirtier than paying for some nice experience. But we quickly learned you have to pay up and it is worth it.
I think the biggest indicator of that is when we started Hustlin' Honeys, it costs about $12 to get a domain name and then $6 a month per person to have. We weren't even willing to pay that. So our email that we were working with clients to was honeys@gmail.com. We were so stingy and we were investing our own money at that point, but like $12 up front and $12 a month, we weren't even willing to pay that.
Weren't doing it,
But we've learned.
we no longer have the Gmail domain, and we bought the suite. We have at honeyxhive.com. We purchased Slack to communicate easier internally and even connect with our clients and pay for that to, ensure that there's the most efficient communication when we just need to send quick updates and don't have time for a call or even something as formal as an email.
Yeah, I think some of the ones that we think are really important to actually pay for, because of course there's tools out there that are free. And so you can, even if you are starting from the very beginning and you'd rather spend money elsewhere, but a tool is important for your journey, there's guaranteed to be a free version that is going to make your life a little bit easier. But some of the ones that we felt were really important to invest in were Slack, as Kylie mentioned, because it just makes the communication process so much more streamlined. And I feel like people are so accustomed to texting nowadays, and Slack really replicates that because there's a phone version and there's a computer version. It's an instant message. Calendly, that is a big one that we definitely run the free version first. And then it's been a lifesaver because you don't understand the pain of sending 5 different times to schedule and then 4 of those 5 times being taken up by the time the person responds. So just automatically with your calendar. And then Canva.
Yep. Even before we started Honey and Hive, I think we both premium Canva.
Yeah.
We would be nowhere without Canva. And then Sauna is one we still use the free version for. That's one that we haven't felt the need to upgrade, so that one doesn't hurt the wallet too much, but it's something we use literally every day. And then I think one that we had to take that big step to realize was a big investment was our social media scheduler. So when we first started, we were manually posting all of our clients' social media posts, our internal social media posts, and as the clients ramped up, that was not doable for anyone. You just forget, or you have a million calendar reminders and it looks like your day's all clogged up, but you're just trying to remember to post. So we started on some free or cheaper apps that were helping, but as the clients continued to just grow, none of them could really suit our needs of getting all the accounts on there, doing everything. So we made one of our bigger, I would say, monthly investments, but when this is one of our sole services of providing social media, it just totally made sense to make that investment.
And when we heard that price point too, I think we were at the point there, it was probably month 8 is when so it took a while to get to the point where we felt comfortable making a big decision like that. But by the time we were at that point, we realized it was a really important investment into our business. So we got to that point. We got to the point where we started off really cringing at spending any dollar and then dropping close to $500 a month on this tool because it makes our lives easier. Things don't slip through the cracks. I think I sent the price to Kylie and we were both like, cool, like, let's do it. That's fine. We know how important this is and we don't want to be doing it manually. We want our interns focusing on other things and posting manually. That was a good one. And then just to kind of wrap up this, I think some other important tools that we use are Lightroom. If you can cut corners, we suggest we do it. We use our old college email.
Yep.
So if you're Adobe, don't watch this. But we do, and so that's really helpful with photo editing as well. And then I think just investments in general we've learned have been really important for our business, not just in the software tools that we use, but also hardware we're finding is really important. This podcast that we're filming on, we actually went and got a new video camera because we knew that we wanted to film this. We wanted to look really high quality, but it turns out this purchase came at just the right time because we started doing more video interviews and more video content because social media video is taking the world by storm. So we realized that we need to make those investments in a camera and lighting and microphone. And honestly, I think with all these investments that we made, the ultimate lesson of everything is when you invest in yourself, it brings you to that higher quality, that higher level. So if you're looking to attract higher level clients or higher quality clients, having these tools and investments in place that make the client experience more seamless, make your content look better and more professional as well, you're going to attract those people that meet you at that same level. And we've learned that it might hurt the wallet a little bit, but
I think they all come back.
It really does.
Just attracting, like you're saying, bigger and better clients, and will make up for those investments twofold, even with all of the new clients we're getting from having this equipment and having these higher quality tools to assist us.
And something that we do too is we actually put money away for this. So every single month we dedicate an allotted amount to pay for things that we want to invest in. And we designate a budget for tools and such so that we're already prepared and already planning to make those purchases and have those expenses. So that's been something that's pretty helpful.
And then in addition to investing in tools, software, hardware, a big lesson we've learned is investing in ourselves as well. And I think where that started was admitting we need help sometimes. And we aren't pro business owner, entrepreneur women. Like we said, we haven't even been at this a year at Honey and Hive. So just taking that time to acknowledge that we need the help and assistance and that it's okay to ask for that and admit that, to just help ourselves go to that next level as well, instead of sticking with our egos and pride at this level where we weren't as optimized as we could be as business owners.
And a couple of ways, like specific situations where we did this is honestly with paid ads. So coming into being a business owner, we were very familiar with paid ads. We would hop on these calls with Facebook, Google experts, and they didn't have to speak to us like the beginners that they were talking about. So that was validating that we had the knowledge, we had the understanding of it, but when you dive deeper into the paid ads realm, it's so much more complex than it appears in the back end or where you track the analytics. And a couple of things that we did when we realized that even just watching YouTube videos was not cutting it for us. Like it was not, and that's a really great option if you can sit down and find the exact video. Like do not forego that. Try that first. But it just wasn't getting us to that level that we wanted to. And so we actually took to Upwork. We had a couple of situations that we specifically needed to look for. And so we just typed in looking for ad expert or looking for ad expert of XYZ. And we were able to find people that could either walk us through their opinions or their thoughts. And we had to go through a couple of people that then we finally met someone who has almost become like a mentor to us with this. He has a personal path where he just wants to see us succeed. And so we sit on calls, we do audits of our ads as well. And honestly, when we started, I'd love to hear what you think too, because when we started, we were really at this point where it was just, we were so afraid and concerned with it's almost like we plateaued a little bit. Is that, I don't know, is that how you felt? We plateaued and we couldn't find how to get over that hump. And we had been looking on Upwork already and we were struggling to find someone. And then we found the person that we're working with now. And we've had more clarity with working with our clients. We've been able to go in deeper and not just surface level, but get even deeper with our ads and our reporting too.
And feel confident doing it and reporting it back to the clients and like really having that knowledge to then make the informed decisions to just help their return on investment. Because I don't know about you, but that always feels like extra pressure that they're not only paying us to do these, but then they're paying for the ad budget as well. So it's just an additional layer of that investment that the client is putting in that I feel like it's really important to deliver on. So before meeting him, really understanding that next level, it was scary going into meetings sometimes, just not feeling totally confident and having that knowledge and kind of second guessing yourself and your decisions and not feeling like you can back them up or really track what's happening through the whole process. I think he's really upped our tracking and analytics as well from that surface level that we were at. So yeah, just as all those tools really helped us level up the business, this investment in this subcontractor really enhanced our knowledge and now our performance. So I can't imagine going back. We were really lucky to find him.
I honestly think this is a good time for a stinger to call that out. Honestly, all these people on social media or on YouTube don't speak about the depth that goes into paid ads. Like, I feel like it is very surface level. And so when we were doing ads, we saw other people talking about the same stuff we knew about, and we felt confident. Oh, like
Mhm.
these ad experts are also they're speaking the same language as us, but when we had someone else open that door for us, there's so much more to learn about that I think the stinger I really want to point out is when people say, oh, trust me, I've tested millions of dollars of ad spend. That wasn't their ad money. It was money they were being paid to use to test all this stuff. And so we wanted to be different. We weren't just testing mindlessly. We were testing, and we've always been willing to test with intention as opposed to just testing anything and everything. So now we're in a good place where we know what works with our clients, we know what doesn't work, and then the ad expert is bringing just us up to the next level, just like we talked about, like up leveling ourselves through our investments as well.
And then in addition to finding these outside resources to help us, I think we've also done a good job of internally working on those and just being really open with each other as co-founders and calling those moments out. I think 3 places where we found that and have been able to notice them early on and continue to work on them are being our own bosses, client management, and having those additional 20 or so bosses. And then, as I said, us being co-founders. We didn't find another entrepreneur expert to help us through these things. But like I said, those were things we noticed, we called out, we've talked to each other, and have taken that time to develop better systems, better structure, and just make sure it's something that we're always working to improve and never plateau, like with our ad experience, and make sure we're always working on that in the back of our heads, even just not falling into any sloppy ways that we might have noticed early on in our business journey. I think for me, being the own boss really took a lot of discipline. I think is the best because you hear all these people talk about quitting their 9 to 5, and suddenly it's I'm working on the beach and I'm working 2 hours a week whenever I want. I'm sleeping in. We quit our 9 to 5 and now it's 24/7. This business is like our baby. And so not that I would ever complain about the hours we're working, but it's a lot of work, especially in a service business where we're taking care of the business and then our clients as well. And there's just an additional layer to upkeep. So I think for me personally, it was learning that discipline of being that person that's liable and not having some boss or team to be able to lean on and maybe slack off for and have that backup, but knowing it's just us. This is it. And each client, it's almost like a make or break experience, that first initial moment with them where they're learning how you are. And if you show up and don't look like you have it together, they may not want to work with you. So just making sure we didn't learn that the hard way of having to lose a client or just keep ourselves in check, I think. So that was a big one for me.
Yeah, and I think how we combated that, because we did have to learn through that and we had to learn through things happening with having tough conversations. And I think here to plug Asana again, that's where that was really helpful. And we figured out that because we're also remote, like we're here together, but we live on opposite sides of the town. And so we don't meet in person often. We've made the decision to be a fully remote business with our interns not even being close to the Bay Area. So having check-ins constantly. We have one-on-ones with our interns. We have our all hands meeting, but then we have an hour-long meeting every single week together for us to just check in and sync too, because we can hold ourselves accountable when it comes to that. Like we can not serve as each other's bosses in a way, but be that accountability buddy for them and take that opportunity to talk through anything, make sure we're on the same page also because things happen. This is also another, important thing. Like when you're your own boss, it's different than when you're a 9 to 5. You don't have people surrounding you to easily step in necessarily for you. Luckily, we're here together, so we can do that. So in those meetings, that gives us the opportunity to like, where are you with this client? How can I step in and help should something else happen? To echo the same sentiment of what you were saying, I think that the discipline of it was really the hardest thing because another stinger and it is so glamorized. Like this lifestyle is really glamorized. And we talked about it in our last episode, but we don't know what they're doing that's different than us. And maybe it could be less clients too. Like we have a lot of clients right now, just making sure that we're on when they're on, we're able to talk to them, but also being your own boss and being disciplined, but also having a life. Like it's a very tough balance.
Yeah, 'cause I think our business is our life, but when that's the only thing, it's really easy to burn out and almost resent the work in a way. And so I think it's really important to us to never reach those points or call out when we feel like we're getting into mindset of that, like just over stress, overwork, and just finding those spare moments. I know for me, even just like getting out for a drive when all my meetings are done, just step away. And you're really lucky to have the separate office space, which helps at home a lot of just separating those two kind of areas of your head and just getting out of work mode at the end of the night and taking care of ourselves. That's been tougher than the 9 to 5 life.
Yeah, and I'd be interested to hear some of the things that you do to separate yourselves even more because something I do too is I do not pick up my computer on Saturdays. Like I've designated Saturday to be my nothing is going on. Anything can wait for Sunday to kick off the week. Having put boundaries or restrictions on to make sure we can stay sane during all this.
Yeah, similarly to you, I don't do Saturday work. And then every other day of the week, I kind of work until whenever, but Fridays, I do a pretty strict cutoff of 5 or 6, depending on if there's obviously something going on that day that needs to be later. Things happen, but on a week-to-week basis, I try to save my Friday nights and Saturdays for myself. And then, yeah, usually Sunday night, just prepping for the week. But I try to keep most of my Sunday day to myself too, just because the weekend's only so long. And it's like the only time we have to really be removed. I work in my bedroom. And so lately on the weekends, I've been really trying to make it a priority to safely, with everything going on, just get out of my apartment and get some fresh air and be away from the desk and the computer and physically separate myself to just help my mental state have a little balance as well.
It's hard these days to do that for sure. And now to circle back a bit, we talked a little bit about accountability as co-founders, but we had never really been in a situation before where we were working as well. First of all, we've never been in a situation before where we're entrepreneurs and we're a founder of anything really. I got my photography business at 16 years old. That's my only pursuit of entrepreneurship. We jumped into this together and from the get-go. And this is not very common. But a lot of times people suggest you have one person be the CEO, have another person be COO. So there's not that power dynamic or the shift or very unclear. And we wanted to make it a point that we're equals in this. Like we have equal say, we work through it, we compromise, that we're never, because we both made sacrifices to be here. Putting one person above the other and below when we equally worked our way up here did not fly with us. So I think that's something really interesting that I want to talk about is something we really had to work through in the beginning when Kylie came on full time was we had to work through our different management styles. I'll touch on what I experienced right out of college and then Kylie can share what she learned because we had to come together with two very different workplace dynamics. Both of them weren't the best, to be honest, but it gave us different skills because we had to adapt. like crazy. And so for me, I was in a situation where I've been type A project management. That's my style since I was super young. And so coming into the workplace, that skill, even though I wasn't a project manager, I had a content marketing role. I was responsible for a lot of the project management of clients that I wasn't even on, just making sure that stuff got done because we had all these amazing creatives and individuals on the team. Deadlines just weren't, that was tracking deadlines was in the back of their mind. And so me coming into this, deadlines are important to me, being on time is important to me. So I learned that style of being on top of it. It was a whole project management role. And so I had that experience of how do I manage other people when it came to their deadlines? How do I work with clients to make sure that their deliverables get done, pull the pieces that other people need to get stuff done. And so that I was doing that for about, I would say like a year and a half in my previous role before coming in. So then when I was a manager myself, I had learned that. And that was a little bit different than when we meshed. It was because we had different experiences.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so my experience was very different. This is speaking to my time, like a majority of my experience before this was at a tech startup, very Silicon Valley. I spent about 2 years there, and over the course of those 2 years, I believe I had 5 different managers who all had very different styles. I had never managed anyone, and I was always on my ever-changing teams and roles. I was always the youngest, newest person. So while they trusted me to have many deliverables and responsibilities, I was never overseeing anything. Everything I did went back to my manager, who reported out to the CEO. And so I was on the ground level of that execution, but I wasn't really collaborating with many other departments. That was more at my manager's level. So I was just being given things, told to do them. I still had deadlines to manage, of course, but my longest running manager, it was a lot of managing ourselves. He was very hands off with us, but same thing where he would take the work and deliver it out. So we still weren't working with managing like feedback or presentations or even like the deadlines of the projects. We were just told what to do, no check-ins. So just given it better be good by X date. So it was a lot to work through. So there was a lot of accountability to learn there, but also the stakes were not high at all. He personally didn't care, just to be really candid. So it wasn't like this environment where we're managing ourselves. We have to hit these deadlines. Pressure is on. You should hit this deadline, but if you don't, I'm not going to be on top of you to finish it. And it's just going to reflect on him because the higher levels don't even know what's happening beyond his level. So there was like a lot of slacking off on my team personally, and we had to really just manage. It felt like a classroom when the teacher goes to the bathroom. We can't be like crazy where another teacher is going to come in, but like your teacher's not there and they don't know what's going on for those 5 minutes, nor do they care. We're not going to go back and review the tapes. And then on top of that, I had another that was very micromanagey immediately following that. So in the transition from one boss who didn't care, wasn't really managing us, we now had this boss, and he was giving us a lot of trust though. And I felt really proud of the work I was doing because it was my work. And he gave me a lot more leeway to come up with my own ideas, see projects through because he wasn't. But the new manager, it was her way or the highway. And so we suddenly lost all of our independence, which it was nice to have someone taking accountability as that managerial level. However, everything we were doing was a reflection of her and not our own work. So neither styles I really jived with, but that was all I knew was both of those two extremes. So yeah, I definitely think it took a little bit of time to figure out what works for me. And this could be a bit of a tangent, but I think something that really helped me learn to work best was getting diagnosed with ADHD, because suddenly all of these questions I had about why I work the way I work, because I think at my core, I am type A, but then I just can't execute. So like I have all the organization, I have all of that, but then it just falls through the cracks somehow. And yeah, I think last year I just was putting all the pieces together. There's a lot of TikTok videos, I will say, and I met with a therapist and got diagnosed, and it answered so many questions. And there's a lot of resources for having ADHD and working in corporate world and just being a functioning member of society when your brain is so different. That really, I mean, I still have challenges, but it really helped me answer those pieces of what is going on that I can't do this. So I think that was a huge moment for me of like really figuring out how I work best, just having that answer. Like obviously there's still challenges, but at least it all has one central answer. And like I said, there's so many resources. So that for me was a big moment into figuring out how I work. And then I think for us working together,
I want to say a big part of it was the fact that when you're at that startup, they expect you to work literally all hours of the day. So you just were able to fit in when you could work instead of that rigid, because they'll say, oh, it's not a 9 to 5 when you own your business. But when all your clients are working 9 to 5, you also work in a 9 to 5. But at your startup, you are working 10 to 12 a.m. like 10 a.m. to 12 a.m. So, like, and we talked about that too, like the fact that it was a different structure because you were just working away all day and taking dinner whenever you could. So that was your working hours, and we had to switch back to when our clients were working. And so that was another thing that was really interesting to pinpoint and to be like, okay, how do we work through it?
right.
Just to summarize everything, if you're working with a co-founder, you're bringing someone on, it's really important from the beginning to figure out and openly express what are those uncomfortable things. Like, luckily, we're friends beforehand, and we've made it very clear that we're equals in this process. So we have those uncomfortable conversations and we've had very uncomfortable conversations, but in the long run, it gives clarity for how we want to run our business, our expectations of each other also. Anything that comes up that just makes sense, or any suggestions that we have for one another to feel comfortable to say those things.
Yeah, I think it all either comes from or is leading to a place of just making ourselves better. So we both know that. And yeah, are just totally open to the feedback, open to those tough conversations. And I think just as we've worked together, it's gotten easier just as time has gone on. I think with working with anyone, you learn how to communicate easier and faster, and how the other person, like the little quirks they don't even know about themselves, I think you just start picking up.
We can try kind of transition now into the client management aspect of it too. If you think about a 9 to 5, I was in an agency before, so I came to a different experience because I'm working with multiple clients to then working with multiple clients again. But in Kylie's perspective, from a 9 to 5, you have deliverables. It's almost like your clients are your managers. And that kind of how, I guess I've never really worked in a 9 to like that kind of structure. So how would you depict the difference between so many clients and the 9 to 5 version?
I think the easiest piece is something that is a little unique to us, but just that you're working towards one goal, whatever that goal is at the time. Like a big gripe I have with my company is the strategy was always changing. So things were always moving with that. But traditionally, whatever that goal is, like when I was on sales, more influencers in our pipeline, one focus, the one product, like we were an app. Where with us, I think a big thing is 15 clients, 15 industries. They all have different goals. They all have different deliverables and needs, where it just, everything was more centralized instead of that like motion of putting one cap on, taking another cap off, and that mental adaptation constantly of one thing to another, one client working style to one industry to another, like I said. So I think that was the biggest change.
I'm also interested to hear what you think about like what was the biggest transition into that, because I think even having worked in that, and I was responsible for a lot of product management when I was at an agency, but we never had a rigid structure like we do now in Asana. I think that when we started this, we had to figure out, especially when we brought on interns and other employees, because we couldn't just keep it all in our heads anymore. Like, we had to have a centralized location where it serves as a single source of truth. Because this is what needs to be done every single month. And so I think I'm interested, what was the biggest transition? What did you need to implement when you moved from single pathway to now multiple pathways?
Yeah, I think Asana, like we said, was a big part of that, and setting a lot of deadlines that are maybe just internal. Like we have the client deadlines, but I think for me, something that helped was just to stay on track of it, of setting those like due by like D-O, not D-E. Like you have the due date of when it needs to be like a live date or like a send date, but then also do this by or start by, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
So I think for me, separating those two things, essentially just knowing like how I work and just, yeah, I feel like there's just a lot more structure in place than just same thing. There's the same things that have to happen. It's all in your head. What needs to get done sort of on a weekly, monthly, daily basis. But it was just simpler because it was one thing, one set, instead of each client having their own thing. So just taking more notes, writing things down. So like you said, there's that source of truth. You can always rely back on like having receipts. I guess is the easy way to say it, of just what's going on, what needs to be done. Because I think in the beginning, I tried to just keep a lot of it in my head of, okay, this is expectation, this is what they want. But as we just grow more and more, it's too much to keep all in there. So just getting a good note system down, documenting everything, getting stricter on timelines, and just, yeah, turning it from more abstract to really concrete and structured, like as much as we can.
And touching on what you mentioned, systems, like I think we have a standard system also that we came up with where for like analytics and our social strategy and content calendars, like those all look the same. And so they change per client. And we even change the colors of the cells based on the client's logo, but at the same format. So they all follow the same format so that when we're reporting on it and when we're setting up all this stuff, like we have a process for onboarding and when we're presenting data, what data we're presenting it as well. Cadences also of deliverables. We have all of those in place and we set those expectations from the very beginning so that we're not doing 10 different formats for 10 different clients. We know what needs to be done each month. We know where that information goes. Our clients know where that information goes. I think another piece of investing is we did have to pay a little bit more to create a shared drive. So we have a shared drive and we share those drives then with our clients, because a lot of our clients that we work with, we are their marketing team pretty much. And so that is their marketing folder when we put all assets and everything that they'll need to check in that folder. So not only are we coming up with processes and systems that work really well for us managing internally, but then our clients rely on that to report to their founders or their leadership team that is in charge of marketing within their company.
And I think that all helped the clients. And then, as you said before, when we hired interns, that was a huge one that they know. So we don't have to teach them. Every time we have a new client and need an analytics sheet, they know exactly what to set up, how we do it. Yeah, exactly. And so it's just saved everyone's time, easier to train and teach, so that there's one singular way to do it.
And then I think we should probably discuss some things dealing with the clients themselves. Check-ins we do every single week. That's really important, making sure we're on the same page. Some can be bi-weekly, but we check in weekly because we're turning over so many deliverables to them each month. So those, I think, setting clear, a big lesson we've learned is clear expectations and clear scope from the beginning. So making sure we were doing it for a little bit, we're going to provide support, like we'll just provide support. Under that broad and general support, identifying what does that support specifically look like, because it'll drive you crazy as to, am I being supportive enough? You'll be chasing after, what does support look like? Or asking them, what does support mean to you? So it's just very, very clear.
Just another way to set everyone on the same page. Because it's not that I think when scope creep happens, to us, it can feel like being taken advantage of, but I don't think the client is maliciously behind their desk. Let's make them work as hard as they can. If those lines aren't set, they don't know how far they can go. And so obviously they'll do whatever they need. That's what we're here for. Any marketing services they need. So not that it's coming from a bad place, but if it's not set, nobody knows, like you're saying, like where does support end, where does support start, and just makes it so clear and easy, and don't have any of those late anxiety nights wondering what you could be doing more, or the fact that you just work so many hours on something that's not in the contract. Just it solves all of those messes.
Is it how do you have that conversation? That's a whole other thing, is awkwardly bringing that up to them. We need a little bit more pay,
right?
Because you want to be paid your worth and the value that you're putting in. it goes back to being taken advantage of. But again, it's never
Not always.
malicious.
Yeah.
Never malicious.
Not a bad place.
To wrap up a bit about what we talked about, we went over a ton of information about all the things that we've learned on some really crucial things, from the tools we use to working together as co-founders. So when it comes to your investments, top of mind really to think about is the investment that you're putting in will come back. So it might seem as an upfront charge, but ultimately it's because you want to show that level of quality. You want to make it a seamless experience. You want to have that quality content as well. And that's what will attract the level of clients that you want to be attracting.
And then when it comes to being your own boss, I think just having the expectation that it's not always a breezy walk in the park, that there is a lot of work behind it and it does take discipline, but just to be open with your team and yourself to always growing and improving and just keeping track of ways you can make it easier on yourself. Because it doesn't have to be the hardest thing in the world, but just to manage expectations and know what you're getting into when embarking on something so different from a majority of people's career paths.
Yeah, and then when it comes to client management, putting in those systems, those processes internally and externally to make both of your lives easier, make that relationship go as and that engagement go as smooth as possible. That's what's worked really well for us, especially when it comes to having 20 different bosses.
Mm-hmm. And then lastly, working as co-founders, just taking that time to really learn and establish how you work well together, what might need to happen to work well together, keeping an open line of communication, and how helpful it really can be to have someone else to hold accountable for yourself and work with together. I think neither of us would be here without the other.
Definitely.
So we're really lucky that it's worked out so well.
It's working. We're here. We're still here. Thank you guys so much for watching, and stay tuned the next time we go live straight from the hive.
Bye.